This is an exciting time in Scotland's story, and understanding our past will help us determine our future. And when Scotland's voice is heard, it charts the way forward. This is Scotland Speaks with Salmond.
Welcome to Scotland Speaks with Salmond here at the ALBA Party Campaign Conference at the Lochgelly Centre here in Fife at 10 a.m. on Saturday morning.
For the Cup Final football.
Yes, always before the football, and today the Cup Final, and we have a treat in store for you before you watch the football, and that is to hear what some of our candidates whose names have been released today have got to say about their upcoming campaigns for the general election, which is going to take place this year.
So let's get into the centre, a packed auditorium, and hear what the candidates have got to say.
So I'm Jim Eadie, I'm out to win Rutherglen for ALBA.
Yay!
I think we have to be honest. People are scunnered with politicians who promise the earth and action on independence and then betray their trust. But the stay-at-home party must not be allowed to win this election. Instead, we have to go out onto the doorsteps in our communities and inspire people. ALBA and only ALBA is the party with the clear strategy, the ambition and the experience to deliver independence. So let's get out there and make independence happen.
Yes, Jim.
Good afternoon again, conference. It's a huge privilege to have been selected to stand as the candidate for the Livingston constituency in the upcoming general election. I'm especially pleased that as a female candidate, I get to stand for the only political party that's put the rights and safety of women and girls at the heart of our agenda from the day we were formed. Since 2015, the people of Livingston have returned a pro-independence MP to no avail. What the constituency now needs is an ALBA representative who can ensure that we end the empty rhetoric and start taking real, tangible action steps to secure independence.
Hi, thanks, Tasmina. I'm glad to be standing here today as a candidate for Broughty Ferry and Arbroath. Thank you. I want my constituents to have hope that there is a real alternative for good governance with politics that makes a difference and doesn't enrich the political elite or the cronies. If we want independence, it'll be ALBA that delivers, and together we'll have the ALBA flag stamped on the political map. Finally, I say to my constituents, when no one can, that's when Ghazi can. Thank you.
Well done, Ghazi. Please welcome Josh Robertson, our candidate for Airdrie and Shotts. Josh.
I'm absolutely delighted to be the candidate for the town that I was born and raised in. I'll keep this brief. I have three major campaign priorities: the independence for Scotland, independence for Scotland, and the urgent independence of Scotland. Thanks, Conference.
Thank you, Taz. I am absolutely honoured to be your ALBA candidate for the Dundee Central constituency. I'm also very proud to have been the first ever ALBA councillor in the Yes City of Dundee as well. And let me tell you, I'm going to do my damnedest to be the first ALBA MP for Dundee Central as well.
Hope you've got a catchphrase, Chris.
Well, unfortunately, the only word I could think that rhymes with Chris starts with a P, so I thought I'll give it a pass. Chris McElhaney, Inverclyde. I'll be standing in the Inverclyde and Renfrewshire West constituency on behalf of ALBA Party. Conference, I did reflect, and Salmond said this a lot better than I could on Question Time in regards to Rishi Sunak's extremism comments earlier in the week that once I did actually take the UK government to court and establish that Scottish independence was a philosophical belief worthy of respect in any democratic society. So perhaps Rishi Sunak should check the law before he opens his mouth again.
I can say that my decision to stand for ALBA Party is a profound sense of duty to the constituents which I'm representing, which is Glasgow South West, my ALBA Party, and my country, Scotland.
Lovely.
Most importantly, today, ALBA Party has demonstrated the sense of inclusivity, unified and dynamic Scotland.
And what is independence ultimately about? It's about taking hold of that common treasury and making it work for everyone. So if we can demonstrate with a little bit of people power what a lot of people power can do, that's my plan. That's why I'm standing for Glasgow North.
Political decisions matter to people's lives, and only with independence can we make our own decisions and unlock Scotland's true potential. The promise of independence once brought us hope, yet a decade later there's been little progress. But that hope has been reignited with the ALBA Party, the only party with a credible strategy for independence.
I'm Steve Chisholm. As a born and bred Highlander, I feel immensely privileged to be your ALBA candidate for Caithness, Salmond and Easter Ross. And like some of my opposition who are being bussed up from Lewisham down in the south of England, the need for independence has never been more urgent, and only independence can deliver the prosperous, equitable and sustainable Scotland we all desire. And I'm standing because I'm fed up with the neglect our Highlands have faced from both the UK and the Scottish Government. Our communities, they deserve so much better. Our coastline holds vast natural resources that are crucial for energy security and achieving net zero. But it's time we take charge.
My friends, independence is not merely a political goal. It is a vision for a Scotland that stands tall on the global stage. We seek self-determination, right to shape our destiny, and the courage to forge our path. Let's embrace our shared history, celebrate diversity, march towards a Scotland that thrives independently.
I moved from England to Wales, witnessed firsthand the decimation by England of deindustrialisation of that country. Close by to where I lived, near Llanwern, the coal fields, also the maritime harbours of Cardiff and Swansea. I then moved to Scotland and witnessed exactly the same happening here. Grangemouth is a cornerstone of our campaign because it represents the message that we have to put out to Scotland that we can do better and we must reindustrialise this country to make a quality of life for our future and our future generations.
The people who have represented Glasgow North East until now made incredibly vain promises that they would make a difference. And they have done nothing, absolutely nothing. They promised to bring business and industry to Glasgow North East. No, they didn't. They promised to improve the health of people in Glasgow North East. No, they didn't. And neither did they bring the kind of housing and the kind of development that they promised. What they have done is build lots and lots of cycle lanes, and the investment in our area has gone down dramatically. So I want to commit to dealing with the poverties of Glasgow North East, but I know that can only be fully done when we are fully independent and fully in control of our own sovereign resources. To deal with the kind of poverty, we're not just talking about poverty of earnings, we're talking about poverty of health, poverty of a standard of living. But the worst thing that afflicts people is the poverty of hope and the poverty of aspiration. And I will work very, very hard to bring that back to Glasgow North East, because hope comes with Scottish independence. Thank you very much, Conor.
Thank you, Catherine.
This campaign in ALBA is liberating to me. And I'm going to say it. What I'll be able for the first time in 25 years is to say with my hero John Maclean, forward to the Scottish Workers' Republic.
Conference, your candidates. Welcome back to the ALBA Party Campaign Conference here from Lochgelly Centre in Fife. In fact, the home of Neil Hanvey's constituency. Now, you've heard from some of our candidates. Let's hear what some of our members had to say as they spoke to some of the very important motions at conference.
Conference today, I stand here not only as ALBA's first elected representative of the Highlands, but as an advocate for long overdue change. For too long, the Highlands and Islands have suffered the consequences of neglect from those in power, both in Westminster and in Holyrood, and the time for action is now. Let's address the elephant on the road, the A9. Now, members, it's not just a highway, it's a lifeline for our communities. Yet, despite promises made and manifesto commitments declared, the completion date has been literally kicked down the road again.
65 countries have left the British Empire. 18 of them have done so following an election. No Prime Minister has ever called into question the result of an election overseen by the Electoral Commission. In 2011, 15 and 21, we were above the 50% threshold for pro-independence majority of votes. Let us put the instruction for independence on the ballot.
The current situation is desperate, and if we do not do everything in our power for an independent Scotland, there will be very little left for us to defend. No one element will take us to independence, but all the different strands united will. Scotland united in action.
And more widely, I support your case for a Scottish energy policy that is sensible and based on science and on common sense and not driven by ideology and fanaticism, because there are people out there, we know who they are, I'm not going to name them, who seem to be hell-bent on destroying our industrial base and our cultural base. Yep. And it's not about the Scotland of the distant future. It's about the Scotland of yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Let's fight for that Scotland, the Scotland of real people, the Scotland that can deliver what ordinary people need.
Welcome back to Scotland Speaks, and let's hear what you had to say about some of the previous episodes.
Dawn says, very impressive indie hero guest, Deborah. Very knowledgeable, spoke clearly and answered well. Gobbles Gal says, loving your invite to be on the show in an activist special interest slot. Great idea. Looking forward to seeing who avails themselves of it. Bobby says, enjoyed the conversation with Alex and Campbell Gunn. Could have been longer. Maureen says, great interview with Deborah. SN4 says, another excellent episode. Thanks very much. And finally, Gobbles Gal comes back on to say, pure dead brilliant, as indeed every episode has been. Big shout out for Turkish Tea Talks too. What a worthwhile watch they are. Haven't missed one either. Finally, Taz and Slange Media, what about the Eyes Have It on tour? Good for the general election times and for 2014 anniversary, plus a great lead up to and into 2026, please. Well, Gobbles Gal, I'll have a think about it. Thank you very much indeed for your tweets, messages and emails. Please do keep them coming in. And we are now going to both head back into the auditorium where it's time to hear from some of our set-piece speeches and our speakers, Ken McCaskill, Neil Hanvey and Ash Regan. And later on, we'll be hearing from the man himself, Alex Salmond.
So the arguments for retention of Grangemouth are clear. It's economically disastrous to close it, throwing thousands of people into unemployment across not just Grangemouth, but the Forth Valley and central Scotland. It's environmentally foolish. There are already 600 ship movements on the River Forth related to Grangemouth, bringing oil in or taking it out. There were 2 tankers part of Dunbar when I was walking around the harbour last night. If you stop refining and you actually have to export everything to be refined and then bring it back in to store it before you transmit it around Scotland, it won't be 600 ship movements in and out. And if people think there's issues with the environmental aspects of a refinery, believe you me, thousands upon thousands of these ships spewing diesel, not just on the Forth, but on the Clyde, is much, much worse. And it's also about energy security, because we well know, and the Herald highlighted it just last week, Russian oil is flooding into this country. It's being refined in India, it's being branded as Indian, and it's being imported. This is a situation when many in the UK government and indeed opposition benches are talking about potential war, something I'll continue to oppose, as I said earlier. The last thing our humanity and globe needs is a rush to World War III. But there are sanctions imposed upon Russia. Maybe, just maybe, they should be imposing those sanctions dealing with those who are importing Russian oil branded and refined in India and not closing Grangemouth refinery. Energy security matters now, and energy security will matter in years to come. That's why we've been running our campaign. That's why we've been working with the unions and with the shop stewards. No other party is doing similar. We need to mobilise, though, not just, as I say, individuals, but mobilise across the country, because this is Scotland's resource. It is our only refinery, and it must be retained. It's why, after discussion with the shop stewards, I've decided to seek the ALBA candidature for Grangemouth, Alloa.
Grangemouth cannot be allowed to be another union nail in Scotland's energy coffin. No matter what anyone says, oil and gas extraction will continue for decades yet, and Scotland, at the very least, must retain our oil refinery, employment and skill development if there's to be any transition and further development. And in this constituency, a stone's throw from where we are today, is the Fife ethylene plant at Musmorran. And that plant is absolutely reliant on the skill sharing and recruitment opportunities that it depends on, with the engineering expertise that is available from the workers at Grangemouth. So it's absolutely vital. And the work that Kenny McCaskill and Ash Regan have done alongside many other campaigners in the ALBA party to save Grangemouth.
I raised the motion of no confidence in Patrick Harvie, and within days, the Greens were out of government. So it's not just the quantity of your power, but what you do with it. Never underestimate how powerful ALBA is in that Parliament, and never underestimate the change that we can make there. I stood up for the principle of competent government, and within days, the First Minister needed ALBA to survive. I offered an open door to Humza on independence and protection of rights of women and children in order for him to take the time to stabilise his government, leaving leadership decisions to the party members, as it should be. But conference, the SNP sacrificed their First Minister to crawl back to the Greens to avoid facing our open door. And with a Butte House backdoor deal replacing Humza, it was then very clear that the government would survive a vote of no confidence, because the Greens had shown that their only red lines were power and ideology.
Water is life, but not all water is equal. Our water ionizer restructures and alkalizes water for optimum hydration and detoxification, recreating the planet's ultimate water sources, found in lightning-struck lakes and newly melted icebergs. H2 Pure Source. Change your water. Change your life.
Now, instead of doing a monologue to camera, you're going to hear my speech here at the Lochgelly Centre in front of the ALBA campaign conference.
And as we turn to hear Alex's speech, you'll see that his introduction is something along the lines of, Alex is in the building. Well, he is, but for now, it's time for us to say goodbye. And from all of our delegates here at the Lochgelly Centre in Fife, we shall see you next week before the football. Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye.
You
You were involved in the nationalisation of that yard?
No, I was involved in saving the yard, and a private business took over the yard. The nationalisation of the yard was 4 years later. I mean, you know, it's many people like me who are looking back over the last 20 years that get my dates mixed up, Douglas. You're meant to be on the spot and on the ball. 2 parliaments, it'd be quite exhausting going back and forward. So new initiatives and new ideas are needed. And certainly one that puts the initiative back into the hands of the Scottish Parliament should be one that everybody welcomes. And the fact that Ash is putting forward the bill should not stop anybody who's interested in Scottish independence signing up to it. In 2014, Scotland was 4% ahead of our greenhouse targets with 6 years to spare. We were 4% ahead of our 2020 targets. And the reason for that is we'd made big moves, principally in the production of renewable energy, huge moves forward. See, if you bring on stream the largest onshore wind farm in Europe, then that has a big impact on your greenhouse targets. I don't think the SNP have lost its way because of a concentration on independence. In fact, I think they've lost their way on independence, which after all, they won an election on a mandate to get another referendum to decide the independence question. Well, there has been a preoccupation in recent years with things like self-identification, for example, and a lot of the parliamentary battles and arguments have been over that very, very divisive subject. And that hasn't, it seemed to me, left enough time to concentrate on the things that matter to the people of Scotland that we've listed, but also the things that should matter to any Scottish nationalist, and that's making independence a priority. At 7:30 this morning, Hamza Yousaf described the suggestions we've made as eminently reasonable. If it had been left to Hamza Yousaf, then he would have come to an accommodation with ALBA, but of course it's not. He bent to pressure from some of the old guard in the SNP who were furious that he was contemplating doing a deal.
Alex Salmond is in the building. Would you like to come in, Alex? Thank you very much for joining us.
So, Madam Chair, fellow extremists, now you've got to say, I mean, I was a bit annoyed by the effrontery, of rich boy Sunak addressing a movement whose democratic constitutional decency has been its outstanding feature over the last century in the way that he did. I mean, I was thinking to myself, that billionaire pipsqueak has got more money than sense. 10 years ago, exactly 10 years ago, to the day almost, another Tory Prime Minister took his cabinet to the oil and gas and energy city of Aberdeen. I was having a cabinet the same day in Stonehaven, so we're both in the northeast of Scotland. And 10 years ago, the message to Scotland from that Tory Prime Minister, as he saw the polls starting to shift towards independence, was altogether different from the arrogance, dismissal of Rishi Sunak. What David Cameron said was, we know you don't like us, but you mustn't judge your vote on the constitutional question on the fact you don't like the Tory party. We really like you. We know that you're a nation, an ancient, honourable nation, and you've got the absolute right to exercise self-determination, but we would really like you to stay with us in the Union because we respect you so much. That was 10 years ago when Scotland held political power. 10 years later, the new Tory Prime Minister equates us with terrorists and every bogeyman he can conjure up. The moral of the story, of course, is you should never let the Tory party get their foot at your neck, because you'll pay for it if you do. And what we've got to understand is why that transition has happened over these last 10 years. Who has allowed Scotland to go from a position of power to a position of powerlessness? Who has allowed Scotland from being treated as an equal partner in the United Kingdom to some subjugated province that can be insulted with impunity? And the answer doesn't lie in Westminster, it lies here in Scotland. We have, thankfully, the people who are going to turn this situation around. I've been listening backstage to the contributions. You know, we've got 18 Scottish champions who are going to be taking Scotland's cause to the people. Let's give them the support that they deserve. I've known Kenny for a long time. We grew up together in the Lithgow, in the shadow of the Grangemouth refinery. No one has better credentials than he to take that matter of defence of that refinery to the people. Because of the position of weakness that Scotland is now in, we need to find a way to end the long series of surrender, humiliation, capitulation in Scottish society. And if there's one campaigner who can bring about that turning point, I tell you it's Kenny McCaskill. Kenny today, no sooner had he made his announcement than he's attacked by John Nicholson on Twitter. What was that thing about being attacked by a dead sheep? John Nicholson on Twitter says it's dreadful that Kenny McCaskill's going to be standing against him at the election. I'll tell you something, John Nicholson's not worried about Grangemouth. He's never even been there. John Nicholson is worried about his comfortable pension in the House of Commons. And our message is, stand aside and make way for a real Member of Parliament who'll defend the working people of Scotland. Dr. Ghassan Abousitta. Dr. Abousitta is the rector of Glasgow University. He's one of the top reconstructive surgeons in the world. He works in the street next door to Harley Street, where I interviewed him in his lavish office. But that man has volunteered many times to go to Gaza and to other trouble spots in the Middle East. And just before Christmas, he wasn't operating in the opulence of Harley Street. He was operating in Gaza, in hospitals with the bombs raining down. He was performing life-saving amputations on children with no anaesthetic. And he described, and I commend you to look at that program, he described to me in absolute detail of what it was like to operate on somebody who was suffering from white phosphorus burns. And white phosphorus is an illegal weapon. It doesn't burn like a normal burn. It gets right inside somebody and burns from the inside out. When Dr. Abousitta was operating, as soon as the phosphorus is exposed to the air, it catches alight again inside the patient. Remember, with no anaesthetic. There has to be somebody there with water, to pour water on the operating wound to try and stop it catching alight and doing further damage to the patient. No human being could listen to that evidence without being shocked, appalled, and stricken with the situation in Gaza. Now, we passed today an excellent motion on that subject. But let me just say, I look forward to the day that Benjamin Netanyahu appears before the International Tribunal for War Crimes in The Hague. And every other guilty leader involved in that conflict. In the 2014 referendum, people said many things about independence. They said, oh, it'll never work, the currency won't do this, or you won't get into Europe, blah, 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 and all the rest of it. Not one campaigner against independence said you can't run the Scottish Parliament, because they couldn't say it. Because the record was obviously, clearly there for the people to see and judge. Now we have to inherit and reverse a situation where over the last few years, the SNP and Greens have left us in a situation that we're going to have to show and demonstrate that we can run this country with a level of competence. And there I think we should turn to the question of energy. As we've heard throughout this conference, and it's going to be the running thread of our election campaign, that we have a historic opportunity not to be allowed to be repeated the same mistakes of the last half century in oil and gas, but to make sure that the new green revolution, the renewable revolution, the endowment of a second generation of vast energy resources is not lost to the people of Scotland. But you know, there are people who expect Scotland to produce the energy, but take none of the benefits. They think Scotland is a convenient powerhouse for England, for Europe, as long as the benefits are felt by international capital and the United Kingdom government. So it's for this party to lay down terms and conditions. Firstly, on renewables. Every single offshore wind farm should have a guaranteed public share for the Scottish people. Every single one. There should be a presumption that all work, all the tens of billions of pounds spent, the presumption should be that work should be carried out in Scotland. Thirdly, there should be a share for the communities where the resource wealth and electricity is to be landed. And fourthly, that the transmission lines presumption should be that they're underground. Why on earth should any community in Scotland accept the impact on our environment if it's to be run by international energy companies, domestic energy companies under the sway of the UK government, and the great revenues once again disappearing into the maw of the Westminster Exchequer? It ain't going to happen the second time round. We have a campaigning issue on Scottish energy and the symbol of Grangemouth Refinery that combines the economic and social imperative with the constitutional objective of Scottish independence. Why should Scots allow private utility companies free rein to place vast pylons in the absence of any secure and national community stake in the energy industry? Well, let me tell you this. Those who think that Scotland is going to be a soft touch again for international capital had better think again. ALBA is coming. Those in the Scottish Parliament, those mediocrities who think their ministerial jobs are safe, had better think again. ALBA is coming. And Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer, confident that they've seen off Scotland, had better think again, because ALBA is coming to re-establish Scotland's independence campaign as the natural party of independence supporters in Scotland. Thank you very much. This is an exciting time in Scotland's story, and understanding our past will help us determine our future. And when Scotland's voice is heard, it charts the way forward. This is Scotland Speaks with Alex Salmond.